you moving the slides? All right, it's straight up 12. So you guys ready?
Yep.
All right. Smile. And okay. We are set. All right, well, welcome and thanks for joining us for the July webinar from Global Data Vault. I am Trista Perot, Director of Marketing for Global Data Vault, and here to kick things off for us today. And we have a really interesting topic to discuss. Today, we are going to go over, let me move this, there we go. Today, we're going to go over everything you ever wanted to know about the VMCE certification, what it is, who should get certified, the benefits of getting certified, both organizationally and professionally, how often you should do it, and some surprising benefits that you can get from obtaining your VMCE certification. So before we get into all that good stuff, just a couple of quick housekeeping items for you. If you need to leave the webinar early, no problem. It's going to be available for replay in 3 different ways. We are live streaming to both Facebook and YouTube, so you can catch the replay there, or you'll also get a link to the replay after the webinar automatically. Also, we'll be keeping the dialog box open during the presentation, so you can ask all the questions, and I'll make sure that we cover those at the end if we don't cover it during the presentation. But we'll make sure we get all those questions answered. And bring on the hard ones for Stephen because he's ready. So with that, let me introduce our team today. Invisible but in chat and available to answer quick questions. We have both Brian Brignac and Leslie Ferris from our sales department. And for our speakers today, drum roll and slide change. We have Kelly Caldwell in product marketing with Global Data Vault and Stephen New, who is a senior support manager for Global Data Vault. Stephen has gone through the VCME, it's a tongue twister, process, I think a number of times, right, Stephen?
That's correct. I've actually taken the test 2 times.
There you go. And he also has his VMCA, which means he's next level as a Veeam certified architect. So he knows a few things about Veeam certifications, and he's going to share his experiences with you today. So with that, let me hand it over to Kelly to get us started.
All right. Disclaimer, all opinions are our own, right? Got that out of the way. So we're here to talk about the VMCE today. Everybody knows that different vendors and different companies in the industry have their own certifications. And that's what this is, the Veeam Certified Engineer certification. It's sort of that echelon of, we really know what we're talking about. Cisco has it, VMware has it, pretty much anybody you can think about has their own industry certification. So this talks about basically that we're giving you proof that you know what you're doing. And it deals with the Veeam Availability Suite, which is Veeam Backup and Replication and Veeam One. Generally, people who deal with Veeam or any product long enough basically know how to administer it, how to deal with it. With Veeam specifically, it goes beyond just knowing about backup jobs and goes with the complete backup needs with disaster recovery, anything that encapsulates the whole backup situation, and talks about deep understanding of data protection and future needs. We'll go into that a bit more. And the challenge that we often find that Stephen will talk to a little bit is when people think about backups, you kind of look at the right now picture, as in today. And what we really want to talk about, discuss, is the where you go tomorrow, right? And that's what the VMCE can help bridge, is not only planning for today, but where to get you tomorrow, so that you don't run into issues with your jobs, with recoveries, with restoration, anything like that. And that quote there you see is just straight off the Veeam website. So Trista, next slide. Okay, why Veeam wants you to have this? Obviously, it promotes a higher skill set. Any kind of industry certification is going to say, I have a higher skill set than maybe somebody that doesn't have that. Elevates the industry standards. Now, for us, as a Veeam cloud and service provider and any Veeam partner, we have specific requirements to hold those. So Stephen, knowing that we're going to talk more about the class in a couple of minutes, can you walk us through the requirements for being able to even sit the exam? So we're talking the Veeam certification, VMCE. What is it? What are the requirements for that?
So the current requirements is to attend the 3-day Veeam Availability Suite Configuration and Management Training course. Once you attend the 3-day class, you can log on to the Veeam VMCE training portal. And then after your class has been verified, then you will be able to schedule the VMCE or the Veeam Certified Engineer test through the Pearson VUE website.
Okay. And you and I talked about that if you're current to a certain time, you can skip straight to the exam. What does that mean?
So what that means is, let's say that you are current. The current test that's out right now is the VMCE 2021 test. That was just released in June. The test prior to that is the VMCE 2020. So what that means is if you are currently certified to VMCE 2020, then you can skip the 3-day training course and go straight to the VMCE 2021 exam.
Okay. And before that, they were doing it by versions, right? So the yearly thing is new. Is that right?
That is correct. So in the past, the VMCE or Veeam Certified Engineer Training course was actually per version. So what that means is you would get certified on the version 9.5, and then you would actually skip a level. So what that means is if you got certified on 9.5, you wouldn't have to get recertified until Veeam 11. So now they have actually integrated yearly exams to where they, instead of the VMCE V9 or V10 training courses, they're actually going to the yearly exam, which is currently VMCE 2021. Last year was VMCE 2020, and then they'll go 2022.
Sure. Now, given that Veeam, traditionally Veeam was built on virtualization, and obviously they do physical and whatnot now. What do you think about the technical understanding required from a virtual infrastructure? I know there's a lot of people out there that are like, well, I have experience with VMware or Hyper-V. I want to get this Veeam certification. What is your recommendation from a technical standpoint of that?
From a technical standpoint, I would recommend that you have deep understanding of the actual hypervisor, how the checkpoint and or snapshots work inside a hypervisor, because that's actually what Veeam does. It issues an API call or PowerShell direct call to the hypervisors to trigger a checkpoint in Hyper-V or a snapshot in VMware. Also, I would recommend that you have an understanding of networking, basic concepts, TCP/IP. You're going to need storage, knowledge of different storage, and so forth, regarding the just basic requirements to sit for the exam.
Yeah, so it's helpful to know, right? This is not a paper test. This isn't something that you can read in a book, or you've got to have some background. You have to have some other understanding, and maybe like Veeam recommends 6 months. I don't know. Is 6 months enough working with like Veeam backup and replication? In your opinion, how does that work?
So 6 months is enough experience to take the class. Realistically, I would suggest a minimum of 6 months experience working with Veeam, configuring it, restoring, monitoring backups before you even sit for the test. Veeam also suggests that any pro partners take the Veeam Certified Sales Professional and also the Veeam Certified Technical Sales Professional that is available to pro partners in the Pro Partner portal. And then they also recommend that Veeam customers can benefit from taking a Veeam availability training on demand at veeam.com as well.
Yeah, and those other ones, those sales ones are free. So that's great, to get a baseline of the product, the pitch points, et cetera. Those classes are free to Veeam partners, not to Veeam customers. But for Veeam partners, it's a great way to get a little bit of a head start on that. And before we get into, who should do it, Stephen, I wanted to bring up, the Veeam Availability Suite. Are there other industry certifications that are recommended or relevant, maybe like the VCP, anything like that?
So the VMware Certified Professional would be relevant. Me myself, I have gone through the VCP DCV, which is the data center virtualization. I have not set for the exam yet, but just a brief knowledge on how VMware works and an overview of VMware was helpful to me whenever I took the second exam.
Cool. Maybe like a Microsoft certified professional or some kind of an equivalent might be helpful as well, if that's what you deal with.
Correct. Any Microsoft certifications regarding focused around Hyper-V would be helpful as well.
Cool. All right. So who should obtain the VMCE? Obviously, we talked about Veeam partners, you and I, Veeam cloud and service providers, but also the Veeam resellers, the people who do services on premises for their customers. Great to have the VMCE, right? To have that extra level of knowledge and proof of that, but also end users. We run into customers a lot that have dedicated backup administrators who are certified in quite a few things. So your internal technical staff or anybody who manages the backups, if you're serious about the products that you use, why not get certified, right? And then, of course, any managed service providers who work this with their customers on their end. Next slide, Trista. All right, so preparation. Again, we're going to skip the training course just for a moment because that's the next slide. But we have a whole lot of other things to discuss here. So configure, manage, evolve, how to study, etc. Stephen, once you take the test, you're pretty much under NDA, right? Regarding the questions, we understand that there's a pool of questions and they change them, but can you give us some examples of what someone might see with configuration or management or anything like that?
So you are going to get random questions on the test. And it will cover the entire Veeam Certified Availability Suite training course.
Right.
So you will get questions regarding how to configure backups, sure backups, how to create repositories, proxies, different transport modes, and everything that is in the VMCE training course, and also the best practices as well as the user guides online are in the test.
So how to study and how long should it take? This is sort of a big question with any test. And I've heard, people say that for this test, you should read I want to say textbook, but I don't know if it's a textbook, right? But you should read the book, the course materials front to back several times. Did you do that? And then also, from start to finish until you took the exam, how long did it take you to prepare for? And then what might any other person expect for that?
So it took me probably, the first test, I probably studied for a good 3 months before I took the test. Wow. And that is reading the course material, the slideshows, the best practices, and the user guides. So just an example of how hard the test is I actually read the study material, the study guide that came with the course 3 times front to back. And then I also read the entire best practices site. And I also read the user guides on how to configure certain options, and also just anything that's what's new. I would also read that as well. The second time I took the second test, I probably studied for a good 3 weeks to a month prior to going out and taking the test.
Because you had a little better understanding of what to do. Plus, you already had, the baseline knowledge, and it was sort of like an upgrade, right?
Correct. That is correct. I already passed the VMCE V9.5. So I did have a general understanding of what I should expect for the test, and knew where and what I should study.
Cool. I skipped over Evolve a little bit because I just wanted to hear you talk about the evolution of the testing that you've done. But from an actual test perspective, when we talk about evolving, and I mentioned it briefly on a previous slide, what does Veeam consider evolution or evolving with this test?
So first of all, Veeam, every single test that every single product version they release, they evolve in new changes, and they add those changes to the test. So I mean, the test has actually evolved from, a good example is in the past test, they used to ask questions on how to configure so-and-so and give you 5 options, to where you would select maybe 2 out of 3. Now they have actually moved to a scenario-based test, to where they give you a scenario and you choose the best configuration for the scenario they provide you. So that's one way they have evolved the test, from going from multiple choice to actual scenario-based, to where you have to choose the best solution.
Well, that's great, because as the products and as customer or whomever's environments expand and change, it gives people the ability to actually test you on real world something, instead of just answering a question. Let me change the question, but hey, my environment's completely different. And that's going to prepare people with VMCEs to evolve and adapt, their environments as they move forward. Looking at, a lot of people ask, where do I get help for this? Because we all know that there's sites out there that try to sell you test questions. I feel that Veeam's done a really good job of negating that, by offering an honest exam, and not something that you just memorize some answers from previous exams. Excuse me. So where do you find real help? Where did you find help? Where can people find help with regards to the VMCE exam that's legitimate?
So the way that I actually found help is, the first thing I do want to point out is, you don't want to read any of the brain dumps that you find on these exam prep websites, because most of the time they will steer you in the wrong direction or incorrect answer. So I do not review any of the brain dump sites. The biggest thing that I can suggest is to review the user guides, the study material that you provide, and then also there are some practice tests for the pro partners, and then also the one of the main creators of the VMCE test, Rasmus, he actually creates some study guides as well that you can find out there, and also does do some walkthroughs as well for you on the test.
Yeah, Rasmus is really great about providing that information, considering that he, like you said, he's one of the people who creates the test. So we know that that's good information and not just something that somebody's throwing out there, right? All right. So we've skipped over the class a little bit because we wanted to just take a couple more extra minutes to talk about it. Benefits of this class, right? It's a 3-day class. It does cost money. It's open to anybody. You don't have to be at a certain level or have any other previous certifications. Stephen, can you walk us through the class itself? Obviously, you've taken it. A lot of people at Global Data Vault have taken it. Why you think it's beneficial? Would you recommend it to somebody who's not planning on taking the VMCE? I know that I've taken a lot of classes in my day that I've not gotten a certification for, but I found it useful. So can you walk us through that?
So the benefits of taking the class is it will give you a better understanding of what Veeam does. How does it work under the hood? I mean, there's certain Veeam has certain components to it that actually allow the Veeam to communicate with the hypervisor, and then also move that data to your cloud or your data vault, or where you're storing the data. So if you want to find out how that data does get from VMware, how the snapshot gets created, how it gets transported to your backup server, and how it does get to the repository. What is a repository? Stuff like that are discussed. It also discussed Veeam's best practices. Are you within best practices? Do you keep 3 copies of your data on 2 different types of media and 1 offsite? It also provides you with the hands-on lab experience, which is very important, because anybody can read a book and just go through and try to actually configure the information that they teach you in the class. But Veeam actually provides hands-on labs, and they walk you through creating the backup jobs, creating the repositories, choosing the different types of transport modes and stuff like that. They also give deep dives on what Veeam 1 is, which is a reporting mechanism of Veeam. It gives reports on your virtual infrastructure, like, do you have orphan snapshots? Do you have, or your data stores running out of space? It also gives you hands-on labs with Enterprise Manager, which is which can manage your backup server, show your job status, basically a web console per se that you can actually, where you don't have to log into the actual console. So this is all hands-on stuff that is taught during the class, and they do provide labs on each of these modules during the class.
Cool. What in your opinion would be something that, I don't want to say a gotcha, but like something that you learned in the class that you weren't expecting, or maybe something that you didn't already know? What was there something like that for you with the class?
So the biggest thing that I learned that I didn't know was about IP masquerading, which basically what it is it's used for the virtual labs to create a segmented network environment to where you can test your backups that are added to a sure backup job. And what that does is that actually creates a virtual appliance that will actually connect your production network to your test network, to where you can assign an IP address from your production network and connect over to your virtual lab, or have users connect to your virtual lab. So that was very interesting and something that I didn't know.
Yeah, one of my favorite things has always been, the sure backup and sure replication features, which I think kind of bridges into the data labs, is what they call it now. But one of the questions, and obviously that you and our other VMCEs can answer, is how do we test these things? How do we bring up, VMs and whatnot on our network without them having IP conflicts? So that's a great point. IP masquerades, really cool thing. And hey, if you didn't know it, you wouldn't be able to see it without this hands-on lab, potentially, right?
Correct.
Awesome. Trista? All right. So here's what everybody wants to know about. We've talked about it a little bit. We've already gotten the NDA stuff. We can't talk about, specifics of questions. We can talk about a few things, right, Stephen? So what can you tell us about it? Obviously not questions or answers, but your experience. And, there's some guidelines here for you to talk through.
So the first thing that I can tell you is it's not an easy test. It is an industry standard test that's comparable to most industry standard certificates. So you're not going to be able to go in there without reading the documentation and pass the test. It is very difficult. As we mentioned, that if you are current on your current exam, you do not have to take the 3-day course. You can take the test multiple times, but I do know everybody here is going to pass it on the first shot. So we don't even have to discuss taking it multiple times, because everybody's going to do great. But you can take it multiple times. They have just recently increased the amount of time that you can take the test, which also tells you how difficult it is if they increased it. You do have to pay for the test. It is a proctored test through Pearson VUE. It is 75 minutes and 50 multiple choice or multiple response item questions. And what I mean by that is they will give you a question, and then they will say, select the best 2 out of 3. Or they will give you a scenario-based question where it will give you an example of Sue has 400 VMs. What's the best copy job that will provide her with an RTO and RPO of 4 hours? Stuff like that. There is several different versions. So if you do fail the exam, if you go back and take it, you will not get the same exam twice. And this is a yearly certification now. Pro partners are required to renew it per the agreement every year. So,
Right. And we talked about that whole, you're not going to get the same questions twice. So you can't study and try to go back and figure out what you failed and then memorize the question and come back in thinking you're going to pass. So let's talk a little bit about truth versus reality. With any situation, we're going to have what you hear versus what's real, or what you expect versus what's real. So, the class is valuable by itself, right? We talked about that a little bit. I mentioned I'm horrible at tests, but I love the education of class. So if I'm not required to get the certification, I still like going and taking the test because, like we've talked about, or taking the class, because as we've talked about, there's a lot of great information and hands-on things that you learn from that. So you don't have to take the class to get those benefits. Stephen, what is your experience with distractor questions? Can you tell us what those are, strategies to look out for, or things that you used when you were taking the test?
So a distractor question is actually a question that is worded similar to the correct answer. So what it is it's a distraction away from the true answer of the test. I'm not going to say a trick question. It's more of a question that may have some wording out of place that looks like the correct answer. So what I have found best whenever taking these tests and whenever I get to these distractor questions, I normally I rule out the answers based on what I know is incorrect. So I will narrow them down to about 2 or 3 choices. And then at that point, I'll look for the question that appears more detailed, because more than likely is the person who created the distractor question is not going to go into great detail on answering the question. So I'll narrow the questions down until I get about probably 2 I like, and then really read the question, because they may word it to throw you off, and then you may think, oh, this answer is correct, but it actually wasn't. So I can suggest read the questions carefully and read the answers carefully. That is the best advice I can give for distractor questions.
Yeah, that's good opinions, good advice. I know that when Veeam came out with the exam, gosh, was it like 6 or 7 years ago? Maybe was their first one now. There was a lot of complaints from people about this. Oh, I know this answer, and they did this and they did that, and whatever. So your feeling is that's gotten better, right?
Yeah, it actually has gotten a lot better. In the past, I feel that there were questions that were trying to trick you, and they have actually moved. Whenever I say Veeam has moved away from that. Trying. So there is actually less distractor questions that I'm seeing in the test, and moving towards more of a scenario-based question structure.
Yeah, so where maybe before there were 10, you're seeing just a couple or something now.
Correct.
Try to make it more fair for people, or at least less confusing.
Yeah.
Because again, I hate tests, and when I took practice exams on this, right, when they were first rolling them out, and I'm like, I have no idea, and I just picked that one. It was wrong. So, okay, so we talked about the expiration, right? We as partners have annual renewal requirements, so end users don't ever have to renew. Is that right?
That is correct. So the VMCE or Veeam Certified Engineer certification does not expire. The only difference between pro partners is they have renewal requirements in their agreements to keep so many VMCEs and VMCAs on staff, to keep their partner levels, but the actual certification does not expire.
Well, that's great. I mean, for end users, especially, obviously for partners, it's great to renew their, get that proof of knowledge year over year. But for the end users who might not want the time consumption, taking the test multiple times, that type of thing, they can take it, and they don't have to renew it. That's great motivation to do it even. Cool. Any other truth versus reality things you want to talk about before we get on to
No, I mean that pretty much covered it. The only thing that I would like to add is if you do take any of the study material or any of the study tests, don't memorize any. I can't stress, don't memorize any of the answers or the questions, because people do try to memorize these questions and answers for the study test or the study guides practice test. I can't stress enough that 90% of the time that is not on these actual exams. So if you go in there memorizing any of that information, you will probably not see that question.
It's just trying to give you a little bit of what the questions might be like and things
Correct.
to consider, right?
Question structure.
Gotcha.
And basically the exam experience is what they're going for.
Cool. All right. So here at GDV, we've talked about obviously the VMCE, not the VCME, but the VMCE. We've got 3 of those here. VMCA is the Veeam Certified Architect. That is the next level up. Stephen, obviously you're one of those. You want to just real briefly tell us what that experience is like versus the VMCE?
So the VMCA test is the Advanced Design Optimization class, and this is more for configuring larger scale infrastructures with over 1,000 VMs. So the VMCA is actually based. You do have to have a VMCE to even sit for the VMCA class. That is a requirement. And then to get a VMCA, you actually have to pass the Advanced Design and Optimization test. And then you are granted, if your VMCE is current, then you're granted the Veeam Certified Architect.
Is there still another class requirement after that you have to do for the VMCA?
No, you just have to sit for the 3-day training course for the Veeam Certified Engineer.
Okay.
And then you sit through the 2-day training course for the Veeam Certified or for the Veeam Advanced Design and Optimization class.
Okay, cool. Gotcha.
And then you do take proctored tests for both.
How hard is the test, the VMCA test, compared to the VMCE?
The VMCA test is a lot harder than the VMCE because it more focuses on design. How do you design the complex infrastructures of if a customer is running 2,000 VMs? How do you design that properly? So the VMCA is a lot more difficult, and it is less questions. So you do get 40 questions on that test. So the test is a lot less questions and also both harder. Gotcha. Not to say that the VMCE isn't hard enough by itself, but the VMCA is probably 10 times harder in my experience.
Wow. That's good to know. All right. So what we do, and I saw a question in chat about how many VMCAs GDV has. So we currently have, and Stephen, correct me if I'm wrong, we have 3 VMCEs and 2 VMCAs. Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct. We do have 2 VMCEs on staff and also 2 VMCAs.
Okay. We're a fully managed service, backup as a service, DR as a service, Office 365 backup. We support VMware Hyper-V and Acropolis, which is AHV. Basically anything that Veeam does, we do. And we do support physical servers and endpoints as well. So anytime that you work with Global Data Vault, you're getting one of those 3 VMCEs, the 2 VMCAs. We also have a Veeam Vanguard at this point. So you know that you're getting experts, and those experts are available to you when you need them for simple restore needs to complete disaster recovery situations. So hopefully you found some of this information helpful today. And I want to thank Stephen for giving us the wonderful experience that he's been through. Trista, I'll turn it back over to you for any other questions or anything that we have.
That was great, Stephen. I'm impressed with how smart you are. So thank you, Kelly, for guiding us through all of that information. And I actually don't see any questions in chat. So awesome job, Stephen. I think you covered it all.
All right. I appreciate y'all's time today.
Yeah, fantastic. So I think that wraps us up. Reminder, we do have this on replay available. We appreciate you joining us today. Be sure and check globaldatavault.com/webinars so you can get a list of the upcoming webinars and you can get notified for our monthly topics. And of course, please follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram. I think that's it. If you can't get enough of us, we're all those places. So, all right. Well, thanks so much. And we'll see you here next month.